In the last year, I've gotten the opportunity to make dozens of passion projects, spanning from a solo short film shot in a day to a feature film shot in a week. This process has taught me that you can make a movie in 72 hours or 45 minutes so long as you know the principles of storytelling. Now I know getting on set is difficult, so we shot hours of BTS content on our last short film, Rogue Wave, to help give insight of what happens on a real-ish film set. I want to demystify the filmmaking process so you can make movies that look like this or go on film sets with more confidence. In this video, I'll be sharing our methods of how we shot our short film Rogue Wave in 3 days. How to shoot a scene, working with actors, and the secret to making a scene cinematic. And between you and me, it's not Nixx Alexa 35 or the DZO Prime anamorphics that we shot on. And finally, I stole what Nik taught us on set and distilled it down into a more simpler setup of shooting with just one light in a mediocre location. So with that said, let's go into the making of our short film, Rogue Wave. And set, action.
With blueprints strewn about us like constellations, we embarked on a journey of creation.
Our main character enters the space carrying tools and whatnot to build this machine, and Nik spins around them orbiting on the easy rig with a Segway. And I thought this shot was going to look like decent. It turned out super cinematic. It looked like a dolly shot. Thinking of your timing and thinking of how you can shoot something, we wanted this to feel kind of more documentary. Like the concept was sci-fi, but we grounded it in this reality to make it feel better.
The modulator, a symphony of brass and copper, a conduit for the intangible frequencies that bind the universe.
Action. The Alexa 35 on an easy rig, and this tool is a really cool one. I don't know it personally, but I've never used it, but Nik explains that it takes the weight out of your arms and puts it into your hips when you're shooting this. So you're still carrying the weight, but the weight load is not in areas that get fatigued as easily. So these operators who are shooting on bigger rigs, they're gonna have this big thing that arcs around. It also stabilizes the shot. So even if his hands weren't on it, the camera's kind of floating. So therefore you're keeping your axes a little bit more balanced. That's the first thing to make a shot look bad or handheld is when the camera starts to cock on an angle. You want to try and keep your horizontal axes level for the vast majority of your time, even with handheld shots. When they start to feel cheap is when they start going like this. We had a very dialogue-less script. If you were to rip through it, there's maybe 1 or 2 full pages of dialogue going back and forth between the characters. The intention behind this short film was to see, could you do a film like a movie trailer? You know, movie trailers tell full stories, and so I wanted to see, could we shoot something like this? So Charlie wrote a 10-page script that was mostly just direction, and we wanted to see, could we even make 3 minutes out of this? The film ended up being 10 minutes. We followed it page by page, and it looked amazing. But one of the things with not having a script on your set is that you start to forget how long you need to film something. So we have about an hour of montage footage that I had to cut down into 30 seconds. But you know, when you're just shooting and getting these beautiful shots, you always want them. And I think having variety in the edit is so important, but also being able to dilute and distill down. So while we had all this amazing footage, it got cut down quite a bit. Great. Love it. Cut. Cool. That was awesome. That was so good. So we are on our last leg of the day. Got about 3 or 4 more hours left. And our next setup is this big mega machine that Beth has been working hard on. It might not look like anything right now, but as soon as the lighting's all set up, it will look like some sort of sci-fi. Let's go check under the hood. Back here, Nik has put some Astera tubes and he's mounted them on the interior. And then we've got this soft fabric, which will make it almost like a glowing, soft box. Trying to mix it to be practical always feels better. I always think it looks better. And so it also just incorporates the two and makes things faster.
I feel like Gene Wilder. I look like Gene Wilder.
Yeah. I think when you're writing your film, we're going to have ideas for these like really high caliber concepts or production design. And what I would say is you can dial it back. Fun genres to play in are horror or scrappy sci-fi. And what I mean by that is horror, you can really get away with grunging things up, and it works within the genre. And scrappy sci-fi works well too, because you can just go to a junkyard and grab things. So anything in the steampunk style or even like Blade Runner would fit within that. And so you can use old tech and make it, look kind of scrapped together, and it works. What's the hardest part right now that you're going through?
That everything went wrong this morning. It just sucks when you plan something for weeks, and then everything goes wrong, and it's like, oh, haha.
I think the creativity comes in moments like this. I think this is the best looking thing I've ever shot or had. Ever. Yeah, we're figuring it out. We've shot quarter of a page. We won't talk about that part. You feeling good?
I'm feeling great.
That's awesome. Where films get hard to make when it comes to production design are either when you're doing, let's say, period pieces where you need, big wardrobe and vehicles and stuff like that, or anything that has like a high concept sci-fi element that couldn't be scrappy. So if it's like a spaceship or it's some robot, there are certain things, or like making like an Interstellar, it's just going to be expensive no matter how many ways you shave the cat. So when it comes to your concept, make it something doable.
Again, it's kind of trippy shit. And I think that's just like black screen stuff. So it's when they bring the final things on.
I do want to speak to the location really quick. We shot in this really cool warehouse, and the original script that was written was based in a house. No warehouse, no big factory. When you read through a script, try and look at it as, okay, here's the writer's intention, or maybe here was my intention writing it, but does the space dictate the entire story, or is it just a backdrop for the story to happen? And if it's just a backdrop, then you can really get creative and go, okay, well, what's a location that would give you more variety on set when it comes to coverage? And again, coverage for that was at least what we talked about before, the one pulling out, then maybe a push in when they turn this, then it's shaky coverage, shaky coverage. When we get to that oneer, we'll just use the gimbal.
Dave and Alice, can we get Dana Dolly in and around this zone? Kind of hand height? Well, because I do want to sneak some of this, this sliver, so coming in at something like an
Me too.
angle.
100%. I always want to shoot in spaces that are familiar with filming. Those who don't, it's a clunky process, not only as a crew to go in, but also as an owner of said space. Just my two top recommendations are choose spaces that have cool texture and work as a movie space. And you might have to modify your set for that or your script for that. And also choose spaces that work with sets, so that there's running bathrooms, there's a spot for you to put your craft, so your lunch up, and there's spaces that are equipped to have gear inside, because sometimes they don't, and you're terrified of scratching a floor or wrecking something.
The Dana Dolly, very interesting contraption. That's the mix of a dolly, a slider, and skateboard wheels all together.
Oh my, yeah,
Okay.
It feels better.
And then Jackie, or actually, no, I like that.
So something I always wondered is how to work with actors. And here's been my big takeaway. I think the best tip I can give to any director who wants to work with an actor is to be cognizant of what they're going through. And this actually works with every department on a film. Until it's turned on, you guys start to feel it, but we're just going to use that for cutting points. Okay. But you start to feel it, and then everyone's going to be in their own headspace. Cinematographer is just constantly going to be thinking about how is this going to be lit, where is the camera's positioning, and how does that blocking tell the story. That's their space always. And so when you talk to a cinematographer, frame your brain into that. And it's very easy to go into that as someone who's into like tech and cameras and stuff. A harder space to go into is that of what does the actor want? But an actor just wants to know what's happening within the scene. How are we getting into it? They don't really care about, 5 scenes earlier. They just want to know what's the scene? What was it just a couple beats before this scene? And what's my character's emotion in this? So as a director, you should just kind of know the emotion of the entire film. And a really good way to do that is just go through your script and almost with the highlighter or even on each page, look at each character and go, okay, this character is in a happy, sad, or this spot, and relate that to the scene prior that they were in. If the actor's already done that, my second piece of advice, and it pairs with the first one too, is just be an emotional support. So make sure that if they're cold, give them a jacket. Are they hungry? Is their throat dry? Give them some water. Make them feel like they're supported on set, and they're really going to feel cared for and therefore perform better. Yeah, and I want to make sure you guys aren't like landing on your knees. So for this, just like kind of fall out of frame. I feel like it's so strong that you can't even like hold on to it or something like that.
They'll be kind of
now
moving,
you guys
but
do
like
have headphones on.
Probably not a
So I think actually.
And always just try and give them some emotional guidance. Even if you don't know what it is, there's nothing worse than like two people not knowing what's going on. So if your actor has no idea what's happening, just make something up. The premise of this is these two musicians build a music machine that taps into frequencies, let's just say otherworldly, and they create otherworldly experiences. Always thought of this concept where I'm like, what happens if someone made the best song in the world? Like, what would that sound like? What would happen? So this is the journey of these two girls maybe creating that.
So it's like instead of like walking towards the control boards, let Kat have that, and then you're more like,
Absolutely.
Great. That feels good. That everything else was banger. It was good pacing. I could hear the sounds while watching it.
And then after like this, and then it'd be like fall.
Yeah.
We're cutting there, or should she be like, turn it off, like, or is that?
You fall out of frame. You fall out of frame. Yeah.
I love what lighting does with production design. Those two things paired together is always like an amazing combo because your set can look only so cool without lighting, and your lighting can only look so cool without a set. So the two paired together, if you can get them to work in harmony, blending both. So we had this idea to put the green light on the inside of the machine, and that would motivate the light for the space. And then that gives Nik ideas of how to light the around by using complementary colors. So all of that stuff ties together.
I feel like what you're after is like an extreme wide to an extreme tight. And
Yeah.
that's not going to happen.
Can I just see what that looks like? Maybe I'm a crazy person here. I think it just focuses the audience in a little bit more.
Okay, let's try it.
That feels good. So, Kat, I'm gonna cue you to flip when to flip that up. And when I say, Kat, are you cool to just cue that as like the camera pushes in? Okay.
Typically when you shoot a wide shot, try and get your intro of the scene and outro of the scene. And sort of a thing that I have in the back of my head is I'll do a dolly push in for the in of the scene and a dolly pull away at the end, or vice versa. You can swap it around, but just have two different movements. And usually a push in is a good move to start a scene, and a pull away is a good way to end. We're like leaving the space.
Action. Great, cut. Got it? Lovely, lovely. Awesome. Yeah. Feel good?
Yep. Thank you, Alice. Mine.
We're now swapping to the easy rig. Doing stuff on handheld is typically just way faster. That's mostly because the operator can find frames. Same as doing a gimbal move, where when you're on sticks or a dolly or even Dana dolly, what ends up happening is you have to reposition everything if the angle's off, or the whole actor has to move. Versus you do in handheld, the two can work together and you can find frames easier.
Just like flipping these switches and then like a tilt up to her.
So looking at Eve, maybe.
Yeah.
When you're shooting scene coverage, you're always just thinking of how do these things transition together. Now, if you have a good enough DOP, like someone like Nik, they'll be thinking about it. But as a director, you should always be like, okay, this shot's going to cut to this shot, which is going to cut to this shot. You're cutting the scene shots together. And usually you're the only person doing that. Unless you have an editor on set, but your writer's probably not going to be thinking of that. Your actors won't be thinking of that. The sole purpose of a director's job behind a monitor, beyond watching performance and continuity, is thinking, how will this cut together in a final edit? And if you can think about the overall edit, then all of a sudden you start thinking about the emotion of the scene, how it relates to the scene prior, and everything else kind of comes together actually once you start prioritizing edit.
Action. Great. Okay, awesome. Cut. Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. That was great.
So this scene, there's two things that happen. The girls turn on the machine and then they start tripping out. So we broke it up into two different blocks: the turn on of the machine and then them falling to the ground.
Cool, and then I know you guys' noses aren't bleeding, but just so we have it for cutaway, like just
and
do it to the end. So it's like you shut it off.
Me too. We're probably gonna
Out
have
of breath.
Dave, can
Look
we
at
take
each
that
other.
whole light and move
What
it
the
like
fuck was that kind of?
5-10?
The reason for that is the camera would have done a big move because their blocking does a major shift. The other reason is because we do a cool camera trick where I'm shaking the camera while they're going through this like psychedelic experience. So if you have to do a lateral blocking move, so character going from the top of the frame to the bottom of the frame, sometimes just doing a cut and reblocking is good. And so just shooting out the beginning of a scene and then shooting out the tail end with the new blocking.
Now let's just hold in this spot. Beth, you want to come in with some fake blood? Just one. We can just keep rolling on this. So Nik throws out some incredible information about how to shoot a scene cinematically. But one of the big things that I've learned is there's a lot of different ways to light a scene. And especially if you have a gaffer to be able to help you set up multiple lights, it can become a little overwhelming. So from working with Nik on multiple films, I stole what he's taught me and distilled it down on how to shoot a scene with just one light in a mediocre location in my course, The 4-Week Filmmaker. In that, I also teach how to make a movie from start to finish, teaching you how to script, come up with concepts that audiences want to see, and then finally how to get that movie out there after you've shot it, getting it to an audience. We're going to be doing it live and interactive in a couple weeks, which I'm so excited. A lot of you have already enrolled, but there are limited spots and limited time to get this Founders Launch discount. You can learn more about that in the description below. So check out Cinematic Academy. You'll get an inside look on how to make movies from start to finish and learn all of my secrets. I'm not holding back on anything, because if we've learned one thing about the Hollywood box office right now, we need good stories in the world. So go take a look at Cinematic Academy and enroll in your filmmaking future now. And action.
If you have time, shoot the entire scene out from one angle, shoot the entire scene out from the other angle. If you don't have time, prioritize the shots you want to capture for that moment. This is where pre-planning and pre-thinking goes. Filmmakers like Christopher Nolan know the blocks of shots that they want to use, and cheap filmmakers and independent filmmakers like the Coen brothers, when they did Raising Arizona, they know exactly the area where they're going to be using this shot, so therefore they can actually save a ton of time and space by just shooting the space that they needed.
Yeah! Great. Good stuff.
And then, Jackie, are you going to be similar to Kat?
I think if you want flexibility as an editor, shoot the entire scene out from that one coverage. So we shot the entire scene as a medium from Jackie's perspective, then a medium of Eve's, and then a close-up of Jackie, a close-up of Eve, and then the bottom and the bottom. And this way, there was more to cut with, and we had time to do it.
The modulator, a symphony of brass and copper, a conduit for the intangible frequencies that bind the universe.
Power goes out. It's like you've just had this full experience. This thing shuts off. 3, 2, 1, action.
Gimbal push in, arcs into our actor's eye, and then I digitally scale in into the eyeball, and then we go into this cool fractal world. Very ambitious shot. The entire time shooting this, I thought it was not going to work. And you're just going to go through that when you're shooting something, is you're just going to feel like, this isn't working. Why am I doing this? But that's the process of making films. There's going to be that insecurity. The only way you're going to know if it's not going to work is by failing at it.
Cool. And so for what's the expression? Yeah, because it's like when you hit it, I kind of almost want you like hit with the wave, and that's where your head.
Okay.
Yeah, and then maybe like your eyes kind of twitching and it kind of opens up right when it goes up. But does that feel okay?
Yeah.
Fortunately to us, the shot did work, and we're really happy with how it's turning out. But just realize that it's this process of elimination type thing.
I'd love to like push down the machine and like kind of go down on him.
Bro, if we do this, we should be doing that right now.
The benefit of shooting a film in the same space on multiple days is that you start to get inspired by that space. Day one, you're kind of wrestling with it, trying to get the coverage of your current scene. You want to have time to get inspired, or else you're going to leave and you're going to watch someone else's movie in that space. You're going to be like, damn it!
We're wetting the floor down. It's going to create some reflection. It's like putting a mirror down, or if you ever use like something reflective on a lens, it can create a little bit of reflection. And so what we're doing is that with the entire frame, so that you're getting more out of your shot. 50% of your wide frames is either sky or ground. And so if your ground is just kind of boring, an easy way to make it look good is just to pour water on it.
I think the optimal setup that we've started shooting is we have Nik on the Easy Rig and the Alexa 35, so getting the primary footage, but then just having B camera with a director, so that if there's scenes that are a little more complex or you need more coverage, or you're in the space and there's just some off time, being able to run and grab the camera and shoot stuff and know how to get that stuff is so nice, because you know what you need. Your DOP doesn't necessarily know what you need. And so they're sometimes going to try and get the most perfect shot, and you have to like wrangle everybody together. So I've always loved just having a camera myself, grabbing some additional shots with no one to ask permission for. And it's been really helpful to my process.
And this is, I think, a bit of a masterpiece setup for the...
God damn it! It'd be like if camera was here, toilet was here, and you're like, come on, Nick.
Perhaps maybe Nick wants to give a little bit of explanation of our lighting setup down here.
Yeah, it didn't really sound like I had much of a choice in that one, but as we've established in the film that the machine is kind of green, and a great complementary color to green is anything in the warm hues. So you're talking your oranges, your yellows, things like that. It helps do another form of contrast for your image.
So if you guys like Rogue Wave and want to go see that film, the only way you can see it right now is actually through Cinematic Academy. I'm going to be doing a pre-launch of the film before releasing it onto the internet. So if you want to go see that movie, learn how we made it, and sort of get a live director's commentary, you can go take a look at it through our course. You can also learn how we shot it and get around an hour of behind the scenes content teaching you all of the stuff that was thrown in this video, but in a much more comprehensive way. I hate ending videos. I hate it. It's so bad. Maybe I'll just keep this rolling and make it like an hour long. No, it's not a good idea.